How's the situation report over there? How it's like with the flooding and the risk people there are exposed to?
Okay, thank you very much. I can hear a little bit. The situation here is that the flood water is receding, and most areas uh, that were submerged are now dry, and economic activities are gradually returning to most areas that were affected, like part of Gadovila in Benue State University here too, and part of Benue Links and Wadata areas. The water has drastically reduced. Quantitatively, we can say about 70 to 80% of the water has receded. So we are getting back to the normal condition.
That's fantastic. Since you said that things are returning to normal over there, but you being a professor of climate science and disaster management, the doctor we have in the studio talked about sanitation. So, how far would you say environmental sanitation could go in preventing some of the diseases that could be associated with flooding in that area right now?
Thank you very much. The issue of flooding in our country is very complex. It's the result of interaction between physical and anthropogenic factors. But the current flood disaster is mostly associated with the release of excess water from Lagdo-Dam, which is located in the upstream of River Benue in the Republic of Cameroon. This is a worrying situation because this is the second time in the past 10 years that the Cameroonian authorities are releasing this water. So if this release is following a 10-year cycle, then we may likely expect it in 2032. So this is a very, very disturbing scenario. It needs urgent attention. First and foremost, we need to start thinking of dredging the River Benue to accommodate more water. And then secondly, federal government need to look at the issue of a buffer dam in Nigeria on River Benue. That is also very, very urgent because a dam has the capacity to control this excess water and also promote economic activities through irrigation, or also a source of hydroelectric power. So it's a project that will benefit both the federal government and the states where the dam is located. Thirdly, as we are preparing for climate change conference in Egypt in the next 8 days, the government can also explore the possibilities of getting some help from international organizations and donors, especially as it relates to climate change adaptation and also loss and damage finance. There is money available to help developing countries to tackle climate change impact, most especially these kind of disasters. So the government can also explore that possibility when the government delegation attends the COP27 in Egypt in 8 days' time. We can also revisit this issue of ecological fund because climate change now is also an ecological issue. The government can therefore either change the content of the fund to include issues of climate change mitigation and adaptation, or it can also change the entire fund to be climate change mitigation and adaptation fund, so that it can take care of all these emerging climate issues in the country that we are facing.
Okay,
And then
all right,
lastly,
sir. A
we
very
don't
quick
have,
one now, because you mentioned earlier that one of the causes of this flooding is the release of water from the Lagdo-Dam. But the Minister for Water Resources said Lagdo-Dam only contributed about 1% to the flood happening in the north-central parts of Nigeria, and it's the major cause of flooding is climate change. Do you agree with that?
well, I'm not here to argue what the minister said, but let's look at the exact situation. Look at the states that are affected: Adamawa, Taraba, Benue, Nasarawa, Kogi, Anambra, Delta, down to Bayelsa. These are the states that are located entirely between the Benue River floodplain. So which amount of rainfall that we generate this kind of flood waters that will affect massively up to this number of states? Practically, it is impossible, you know. And then secondly, the same event happened in 2012. And it is the same states that are affected. NEMA conducted a post-disaster need assessment. The 188-page report is there. Majority of the states that were affected in 2012 are the same that we are being affected, and the same will be affected in 2032 if the water is still released. So this is something that is too practical for us not to debate. The evidence are there.
Let's talk about climate change on it too. Although everyone has a theory on what contributes to climate change, but now let us look at the human factor, because at the end of the day, humans are still the cause of climate change. But what things do we do in our own environment that you feel might be fueling this climate change and making us get the backhand of it?
Well, thank you. If I hear you well, climate change has come to stay. Climate change is irreversible or irrevocable, and what we are saying are just part of indications that the global climate change has taken place. So basically, we have 2 or 3 issues related to climate change now. Climate change mitigation, trying to reduce the greenhouse gases to the level that will prevent interference with the climate system. And then we have the climate change adaptation, which has to do with all the issues relating to coping or adapting to the existing impact. As a country, we are seeing some of the devastating effect of climate change. Flooding is now one of the major disasters, and then drought and desertification in the northern part of the country. So we have a lot of things at stake to gain from the ongoing climate change debate. Just like I've earlier said, we can benefit from some of the climate change mitigation finance that has to do with carbon trading. We have a lot of forest in the southern part of the country that we can use to trade some credit in carbon. And also the northern part of the country is very key to renewable energy. We can invest in renewable energy, which is one of the strategies of climate change mitigation. And that can also earn us a lot of respect in the global community. If you look at the northern states of Katsina, Kano, Jigawa, Yobe, and Borno State. There are good potential sites for energy farms. Energy farms can take a lot of people, thousands of households, from the use of firewood, from the use of kerosene, and for the use of charcoal. And that will go a long way in reducing the tons of CO2 that are emitted annually in the country. We can also look at a lot of areas that has to do with restoration. We can incorporate restoration of marginal areas, especially in the north, through the process of reforestation that can help us also in fighting desertification, and also in the process restoring the greenery of those areas. And these policies and projects can also help us to advance our own climate change mitigation efforts, and also reducing the issue of gas flaring in the Niger Delta and other oil producing areas.